Right, it's Sunday morning. Video I put up yesterday was of getting the short block ready. Today we're gonna focus on the top end and some other stuff that I got rolling for the Trans Am that is yet to be named. Clean my screen, it's dirty. It's dirty screen! All right, so these cylinder heads are sat overnight. This is just 4 parts ethanol, 2 parts C16, half a gallon of lacquer thinner. It's a very specific combination that you must follow, which really means it's what I had laying around in the shop, and I just put it all in this bucket because I wanted it to eat away at all the crud on these cylinder heads. Let's see how they look. Sitting overnight, see how it looks. The combustion chambers cleaned up real nice. The valves could use a little scrubbing. Obviously, all this carbon and stuff is going to build up again anyway, but I like having a fresh head to go back on. Well, not really a fresh short block, but a fresh-ish short block. So final product of cleaning one of the cylinder heads all the way up, and I'm going to flash back and kind of show you how we got here. But you can tell, like, the combustion chamber area where it's rough in the casting, I don't spend a ton of time cleaning that up. I don't really care that much about that. Again, it's going to take a couple run cycles, and these are going to be all gritty again. But to get a bunch of the general junk out of there is what I focus on. And I also pop each valve, and I actually chuck the valves into a drill, and I clean the valves off with a little emery cloth. And I'll show you how I do that stuff as well. But again, this is a finished cylinder head, assembled BTR spring kit. There's nothing else on the market that's worth a damn comparatively, in my opinion. I put that on God, bro, or whatever the 12-year-olds say nowadays. But soaked in a little bit of oil. Again, I'll show you how we got to this point. But the cylinder head's cleaned up awesome for just sitting in some ethanol and a little bit of spit shine. Let's double back. Again, I'll show you how I got here. All right, so once you get your head out of your ethanol bath, have a couple dirty rags laying around, stuff you could just use to wipe up junk. I always pop the valves out first. I pop them, I don't know if this matters or not, but I pop them out in order. And that way, when they go back in, I don't lap them back in or anything like that. I just put them back in their homes. So this engine was run for however many miles. These valves have worn against those valve seats in their own way. So let's keep them back in their home. Keep them nice and happy. And you can lap them back in. I just don't have any lapping material, blah, blah, blah. So that's done. Once those are out, get your valve seal pliers. These are very specific. They're definitely not just Harbor Freight pliers. And you're gonna pop these hat seals off, seal the junk that's underneath them. The only reason I don't do these before I put them in the bath is because I want the valves to sit in the bath in their respective homes. The problem is they leave a bunch of crusty, junky oil underneath. So pop these suckers out, take one of my semi-clean / dirty rags, and I just start cleaning it up, getting as much of that out as I can. Also make sure you have like an almost empty thing of brake cleaner handy. So you really can't make any headway. You gotta stop and go to the store in the middle of doing this. That's always fun. But the good news is before I do anything, I actually take this into my bathtub, my hot tank, and I wash it out when I'm done with this. So valve seals off, let it soak, blah, blah, blah. Again, I'll be right back after I take this thing to my hot tank / bathtub. All right, back from the hot tank, not the bathtub. Go back through, and after I'm letting it drip dry, I wipe down all the surfaces, and then I take a leaf blower, and I use, because I don't have shop air here, and I just blow it out with a leaf blower. Very, very intricate process in terms of cylinder head prep. I said earlier, I cleaned the valves up. It's actually not that big a deal. But you can see where the soot and junk is built up. These valves are actually in really good shape. The exhaust valves will show more of that trash than intake. But I'll show you what I do. All I do is take a standard drill, okay? Chuck it up in the drill, lock it in, take a piece of Scotch-Brite, try to stay away from where the valve job actually is, just in case I'm super strong and I mess up the metal. And when I'm done with that, I'll wipe down. And good to go. Good enough for who it's for.
result. Again, it's not perfect, but for what I'm using this stuff for, it's more than enough. A lot of people don't even clean these. I don't blame them. I doubt it's worth anything, but a little peace of mind. And again, you can still see remnants, but that big chunk of exhaust that was just stuck to it, carbon that was stuck to it, is now gone. Get a little weight off the valves. Then I go through and I just hand wipe all these things down after I clean up the work area. Get ready to shove them back in that head, right? Sick! Now you're ready to get the cylinder head back in on the action. You can see I still gotta wipe some of this water out and it's dripped through. All right, so on the BTR spring kit, it comes with, you'll get the springs, you'll get the locators, you'll get the retainers, you'll get the seals, and you'll also get the locks, which you get a bunch of these locks for the valves, okay? Before I start with this rather, I get my little pump jobber and I hit the locators, where the locators sit, I hit those areas with some oil. And then I also hit the top of the valve guide with some oil. Just a little bit. Then locators go down first. Locators go down before the valve seal, because on a factory seal, see how it's a hat style seal? This is the actual valve spring locator. Since we don't have those anymore, this becomes the locator itself. So those go down first. And once I put them down, I actually give them a little spin job to get that oil moving around. Don't be stingy with the oil, doesn't matter. The reason I put the oil down on the actual guide itself is because it makes the valve seal go on just a touch bit easier. And usually I go back over the guides again, just a little more oil, because who cares, right? I want on startup to think that this thing is smoking like a diesel and it's all my fault. All right, so once those are on, a couple things, and if anyone from Brian Tilley Racing is watching, turn it off now. Valve seals, okay? BTR sells a valve seal install tool. Okay, this thing, you notice how the top's all hammered down? It's because you're supposed to use it with this eyelet. You screw this eyelet into the rocker stand, then you put the seal itself on the guide, and you use this eyelet as leverage to push down on the valve seal install tool. I don't like using that just because I'm really impatient. So I just chuck this thing up. This has like a receiver for the seal itself. I literally just chuck it up. I square it up over the valve seal hole itself. And then I take my valve seal install tool. Looks like a hammer. Once it changes tones, I know the seal's installed. So nothing special there, just how I install them. Again, the right way to do it is not to hammer on this. So don't follow my instructions and don't use like a 13mm socket. Just spend the money. At least this thing won't gall up the seal itself. But yeah, let's get this done. Right now that the seals are expertly installed, I go back through one more time and I actually oil the seal itself, the top of the seal, and get some oil into that rubber. The reason I do that is because I'm about to pass the valves back through and I want them to have a little bit of lube on them. Not just the lube that I put on the actual stem, but some on the valve seal itself. There you have it. So the valves are back in. Next step is obviously the fun part, and that's reinstalling valve springs. So you're gonna want a valve spring install toolkit. I use this one, I don't even know it, maybe Bluegrass Performance, I can't remember the brand, but this is the one we use at the shop. So I commandeered it myself. I had some spacers underneath the rocker bolts just so it's easier to bolt and unbolt it to the rocker stands. But you're gonna need a valve spring install toolkit for this. That's one design. There's a couple other versions on the market, but that one, in my opinion, works the best for doing two at a time and getting them done quick. Now you're gonna have a lot of negative Nancy's in your ear telling you, hey dude, you know you got to also hit the locators with some oil too before the springs go down. You can't, there's not too much oil here. Use as much as you want. But again, you're gonna have some negative Nancy's that are like, dude, you need to measure install height. No, you don't. Don't listen to those people, they're wrong. I mean, they're right, but don't let that negativity into your life is what I'm saying. You need to flourish without their, you know what I mean? Like the people that come over for Thanksgiving dinner, they sit down, they didn't bring a dish. but they sit down and all they do is talk about how dry the turkey is and how they could have done it better. And sure, they may be Bobby Flay, they may be Gordon Ramsay, but this is my kitchen. And I don't know what this analogy has to do with engines, but what's that guy, Emerald, the Lagasse? Bam! Or wham! Or what did he say? That's me. I'm that guy. Anyway, valve spring install toolkit. This unit itself, after I like loosely snug the bolts in, I jostle it so it comes as far forward as it can. LS3 heads, the bolts are offset on the intake rockers. So I try to get this thing squared up as best I can before I tighten it. And then I use a very specific torquing device to torque it down. Once that's done, take my retainers, okay? Oil up the spring. Again, who cares? Lots of oil. I get the retainers in there. Obviously the stepped side goes down. Turn down for what? Once that's done, take the top piece of this tool, thread that sucker in. Now I'm gonna grab the camera and zoom in just a touch and kind of show you the only issue you're gonna have, not issue, but something to be careful about here. So it's unhooked. Ah! You guys okay? All right, good. So as you tighten this thing down and you compress that spring, make sure that you jostle this spring so that the valve stem stays as centered as possible in the retainer as it draws down, because you're gonna have to shoehorn in some locks in the situation. So if it, like, let's say you start to tighten it down and it gets cockeyed one way and that valve stem is justified right or left, it's gonna be very hard when it's at full compression to get that valve lock in without using a pry bar. And you're gonna have to use a pry bar in certain situations with certain tools, but the less you can pry on your valve train, the better. Let's chuck you back up in the overhead position. And let's rock and roll here. So, what am I looking for? Got it. Get a little bit of tension going into it. Once you start to draw those springs down a touch, then you can, again, overhead look. Make sure you got your springs centered. And then keep drawing down. The other thing about adding oil to those valves is it actually helps the valve stay stuck in the upright position. The oil grabs onto the valve stem a bit and gives you a little bit of leeway. Remember I just talked about using a freaking pry bar on your valve train? Well, I'm gonna have to do it on this one because talking and doing this at the same time is not my will forte. So, get one lock in on that side. I think this one I'll have to do a little pry job. Lock in on that side. This is not meant for dudes with big, fat, clumsy fingers. I'm talking about myself, if you were wondering. So. I pry on the tool itself, just to try to get a little bit of leeway. And then as I'm prying against the tool, I'll spin that lock around to the tight side. Now that'll hold my position. And on the locks, if you can see, obviously it's the conical side down. So the groove is what grabs into that stem. So I should say conical side, the angle side down. So as it angles towards the stem, that's, you want to drop one and then have the world's dumbest magnet to pick it up. Get this one in. And also put it in upside down. That's helpful. I have performance anxiety with this camera on me, boys. This never happens on my OnlyFans. All right, now that those are in, back this back off. You see the locks start to grab. Bueno. Pull this out a little bit more. I want to relieve as much tension on the tool as possible before I go to pull it out of the rocker stands, because the more tension, the more likely you are to strip some of those stand bolts out. And I don't want to do that. Man, we are money. Check it out. And it's crazy is the test there is you just, good. Done. Wipe them down. Good to go. And I repeat for all of these. That's all there is to it. Straightforward. If I can do it, you can do it. I promise it's not that bad. So 2 heads done. and get ready to chuck these back on that short block. In the meantime, I want to show you one other part that's going to be going in the Trans Am. I'm sure you guys have seen cylinder heads bolted up to an engine enough times you don't care, but I think this piece is going to be pretty trick, and it's going to set off the interior of this car pretty dang well. All right, it should serve as no surprise. I got a gang of Haltech up there for the Malibu, so you know that the Trans Am's getting the same treatment. And one of those things is the IC-7 digital dash. So the digital dash they come out with, IC-7, works with all their ECUs. I did another video on how easy it is to connect these. But for a mounting solution, Car Chains 3D, Corey shot me a message, said we have these F-body mounts specific to the IC-7. They make them for a bunch of different chassis. This specifically, obviously, is for an F-body, carbon fiber background, and the IC-7 will sit nicely in there. So I'm going to get this backing plate taken off so I can get the ECU put in there, or the dash mounted in there, and then I'm going to show you what this thing looks like installed in that car. Sweet! So that's it sitting in the shroud itself. You just have to, honestly, I took apart too much of it. The only thing you got to do is take off one side of these two plastic mounts. They're separate pieces. So a few bolts on each side. I pulled this mount off. I pulled this mount off. I didn't need to. You can just pull one side, slide the IC-7 in, and then bolt up the other side, and there you go. Now it also has these two mounting holes that are they're bosses that are into the actual dash, and the dash comes with hardware, so I'll run two more bolts through the back of it into the dash itself before I get ready to lay it up into the actual car. There you go. So pull this thing out and show you. It's got these receiver tabs, and those coincide with these bottom holes. This dash is broken, so when I bought the car, this was already broken. The good thing is, with this dash mount, I can use it to actually cinch this part of the dash back up and keep it all bolted together instead of just using a piece of plate steel or something. So when this thing goes in for final mounting, get that in there. Those bottom tabs, they'll actually, like I said, they'll draw it all together. And then when you're done with that, you just reinstall your fascia piece. I don't want to final install it because I still have to wire up some stuff on that dash, but as simple as that. Obviously when it's bolted in, it'll look nice and clean, but really straightforward, real nice. The product is inexpensive as far as a solution to getting a dash mounted instead of cutting yourself to pieces, fabbing something up. This is nice, durable plastic, and I think it's going to stand the test of me, which is really the most abrasive test there is. Charlie, I gotta, no, don't cock your head. I need to do it. Charlie, I need your focus here. We got it. Frank, come on, man. All right, that's the end of the show. Bye.